In this video, I'm going to be making this sheath. I just finished making up that knife, new hunting knife that I made. Um, the knife's made out of 440C stainless steel. I think it's 316 or 416 stainless bolster and a Cocobolo handle. Um, I like to have fixed blade knives for hunting and to carry with me when I'm out in the hills, but I don't typically carry a fixed blade knife. I usually carry a pocket knife most of the time. And I don't really like carrying fixed blades on my hip, so I wanted one that I could attach to my pack. So that's kind of the point of this sheath. So here I just made up a little pattern. I like to do this. I don't do enough leather work to trust myself to just cut it straight out of leather. So I typically make a pattern out of paper first, and then this is it's like a 7-8 ounce veg tan leather. Transfer the pattern, and then I'm just cutting it out here on the bandsaw. Definitely don't need a bandsaw to cut leather. It cuts pretty easy with a razor knife, or if you just had a sharp knife. But yeah, quicker and easier for me. So I typically cut leather this way on this thick of leather. The thinner ones I'll just cut with a knife or scissors. Once I get it cut up, I'm just making sure everything fits the knife, that everything's looking okay. And then the next thing I need to do is I wanted to put rivets um, on the sheath so I can lace it to my pack. Or excuse me, not rivets, eyelets. Usually I'll put rivets just to kind of make it stronger on the corners when I'm stitching. But this one I want to put eyelets so I could lace it with some 550 cord to my pack. So this tool here just kind of sets it's a grooving tool, and so it's what I'm using it for is to get lines in the sheath to put my stitching in, so it doesn't look too bad if I'm trying to freehand it. I actually scratched the tip of the sheath with that grooving tool, and instead of just leaving it, I turned it into kind of a little crosshatch at the bottom of the sheath there. I don't know if it was necessary. It looks okay. It's not awesome, but that's why I did that. Anyway, I'm burnishing the end of this where the knife goes into the sheath, because once I get it sewed on, I won't be able to do that anymore. So burnish that up. And then this is just a leather glue, almost like a super glue for leather. I'm going to glue that piece on and clamp it up and let it sit for probably 15 or 20 minutes before I come back and start laying out for my stitches. This is just a hole punch. I keep getting the hole punch stuck in the leather as I'm trying to put these holes in. I saw a YouTube video guy making probably a sheath. I don't remember what I was watching now, but he was saying to put wax or beeswax on your hole punch, and then it'll slide in and out of the leather a lot easier. I haven't actually tried that, but looked like it worked like a champ for him. So, and here I've heard them called pricking irons. I've also heard them called stitching chisels. This is just punching equally spaced out holes for my stitching is what this is for. All these tools that I'm using, I got, I think on Amazon, just like a starter toolkit for leather working. There's a whole bunch of different kits, and I don't know. So I don't do a lot of leather working, and I wouldn't say I'm awesome at it, but so I wouldn't know if these cool tools are good quality or not, I guess is my point. But it's getting the job done for me, and none of them are so bad that I feel like I need to replace them just yet. Anyway, so I get the holes punched, and I get the holes for my stitching all laid out and punched through the leather. And what I'm doing here is called a saddle stitch, and so it's like a a loop on the end, and there's the threads are on either side of the leather project, and then they kind of cross through each hole, back and forth, kind of zigzagging alternately through. That's the stitch I'm doing here. Um, a lot of guys will put those. Each strand will have its own sewing needle, and you'll just cross them back and forth, which I think probably will work better. But my fingers aren't strong enough to do that, or maybe my needles aren't sharp enough to just pass through. But I use an awl with a needle, um, for stitching, and then this is my just an arbor press. I'm crimping the eyelets on the sheath there. I do some Kydex stuff, and so I made an investment in this arbor press, because I do. For a while, I was doing quite a bit of this stuff, in Kydex. And there's the eyelets on the sheath there. So the next thing is I want to have a retention strap for the knife, so it doesn't fall out of the sheath when I'm in the woods or taking the pack off or anything else. So just kind of cut a little strip, and this is it's a guess, but probably like a 4-ounce leather strip about. And then I'm just fitting it to the knife, and then I'm going to put a snap on that too. Make sure that it's fitted and working, snapping okay before I attach it to the holster. I actually made another one where the snaps were backwards. So this is what you're seeing is my second attempt at this little strap, which is why I do this, where I like test fit it and make sure everything's fine before I attach it. Once I get the strap the right size, then I'll put on these snaps. The snaps I have are like out of a kit. I have some brass snaps that I got from Tandy Leather that are pretty good quality. These ones are not nearly as good a quality, but I got a bunch of them in a kit, an assortment kit. So if this snap ends up not being strong enough and I'm dropping the knife, hopefully I won't lose it. Then I'll replace it. But it seems like it's maybe okay. So I'm gonna go with what I have. Once I get the strap on and it's fitting fine, then I'll put a little glue, let that hold it in place so I can put some stitches in it when the stitches are really holding. There's glues for leather that are much stronger than the one I'm using here. I just rely basically on the stitches to hold this thing together. But a contact cement, or I think there's some just stronger glues you can get. Most of the glues and finishes and stuff like that I got from Tandy Leather, and so I kind of just go down there and talk to the people that know way more about this than I do, and ask them, tell them what I'm up to, and ask them what products I should get. That's kind of how I do that. Same leather for the belt loop, and I just put the belt loop on, stitched it on top, and now I'm going to put a snap on the bottom so I can get this on and off the pack or my belt if I'm happy to wear it on my hip. That's an old belt you can see there on the workbench, and I wrapped it with a bunch of layers of masking tape, so there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. I don't want it super tight. Get that on, and then here I'm just test fitting it on my pack. This is an Everly stock pack. Just test fitting on the molly webbing there. Everything seems to fit fine, so now I'm going to start doing the finish work on leather. I'm using a belt grinder here, and just smoothing out the curves, rounding everything off, making sure that the stitched together leather are kind of on the same plane, is what I'm doing here. Definitely don't need a belt grinder to do this. You could do this with a knife. You could do this with just a sheet of sanding paper, anyway, once I get that kind of the shape I want, this tool that I'm using now is called a beveling tool. and it's just like it sounds. I'm just beveling the edges of the sheath. Um, that's not a necessary step, but it just makes the leather project look a little nicer, end up a little better. Once I get some stain on this, which is the next step, I'll go back and finish the edges. Um, like I said, this stain, I just went down and picked a color and talked to the guys down at Tandy Leather. I live outside of Boise, and there's a Tandy Leather in Boise, so it's relatively convenient for me to go down and talk to them, which I recommend, for most things if you're learning like I am. Anyway, just putting some dye on all the leathers that I'm using to get them to match color. Then I come back and kind of buff off the excess with just a paper shop towel there. The next thing I'm doing, and I forget what this stuff is called, but it's for burnishing the edges, which is kind of smoothing and polishing the edges of leather. They call it burnishing. So this stuff I got from Tandy Leather too. I put that on the edge, and then it's a burnishing tool. I've also heard these called slickers, but kind of moisten the edges of the leather, and then the friction smooths and polishes from that tool. And there's different size grooves in it, and it's kind of tapered on one end and rounded on the other so whatever shape your leather's in, you can kind of polish that out a little bit. And this is, as far as I know, is strictly cosmetic. Just makes it look nice, and I'm not sure it serves any other function, but it does make a big difference on how the end project looks, I think, anyways. And then this is just a leather finish I'm putting on here. I think it's a satin sheen leather finish. Get that finished up, and then kind of set it up to let it dry. And then the sheath's all finished. So here I am putting it on my hunting pack, placing it on. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to tie it down to make it work. I haven't taken it out and tried it yet. I think it'll work just fine. Threw some extra paracord on there just in case, a paracord's one of those things just handy to have, and I think having the knife accessible from the outside of the pack is going to be useful too. So there it is, final product. I think it turned out good. Thanks for watching the video, and hit the like button if you liked it, and hit subscribe. Thanks.